All others, no opinions. We don't have opinions. Start forming opinions, otherwise you will not be able to crack your exam as well as crack your life. You have to have opinions. It's okay to have a different opinion from mine, and it's absolutely alright, but have opinions. Somebody who does not have opinions is not a person who is, who's going to sail through in life. So start having whatever opinion. You all heard to the speech yesterday. So you were all party to the conversation. You were all listening to it patiently. You all had something or the other to go back on. Something you heard, something you understood, something you did not understand, which is understood by me. Okay, it's all right, and that's what we're going to do today. As to what do we see about this entire budget? How do we see this? Then we have economic times, which is also gone non-traditional today. Okay, because all the past years, at least for the last 10 years, the budget, the newspaper post the budget day never looks like the way it looks today. It's a meme-based paper. It is nothing but movie memes throughout the paper, and it also reflects that they have nothing to speak. That's why the memes exist. There was nothing, and that's exactly how I see the entire budget. That it was so limited in response. It was so limited in the entire structure that we did not get anything. So the newspaper said, okay, let's do memes so that at least there's something interesting to read. If you were going through a normal past year historical budget newspapers, you get the entire budget speech with the entire details of the policy in fine prints, and it is very difficult to even read at that point of time. It becomes so difficult sometimes because it is so technical. But they understood that there was nothing technical yesterday, and that's exactly what happened for the budget meeting yesterday. Let me also give credits to Shubhan. Shubhan is sitting right here. He assisted me yesterday for creating this presentation and helping me out with the entire process. Give a round of applause to Shubhan. Thank you so much. He's done a brilliant job. Very honestly, I have not seen this presentation in detail. I just had a glimpse of 5-7 minutes and just gave him some feedbacks. But I think it's a great and well-made presentation about my views and thoughts. And then we'll probably look at the Economic Times paper and then spend the next 1 hour discussing what happened. Okay. What do you think was the highlight of yesterday? The most important thing, what is your absorber for yesterday? Anybody can raise hands and say, this is one thing which I remember is the most important thing.
The aquamarine sector.
The aquamarine sector, okay.
Capital expenditure rose from
capital expenditure rising, okay.
A new corpus being created.
Positive growth projections, but we have always had positive growth projections.
So India is on a track to reach a $5 trillion economy.
Okay, $5 trillion economy.
Focus on modern tourism in future.
Focus on modern tourism, okay. Fiscal consolidation, okay. Nobody is really saying what I am about to say actually. Women empowerment, solar energy, housing, income tax relief.
FDI, she gave a different meaning.
So my view is this: from being called a developing nation, we created, which is fine. So I'm just trying to say this was my highlight, and it's a personal view. You can have all of us have the rights to have our own opinions. But for me, I think this is the first time when we are hearing a country like India being called developed by the country leaders. And I think that's a very wow thing to happen. That first developed India is a term which has been coined. That for the first time, we are now on the verge, or we are to be called a developed nation. We should not be called a developing nation. We are not a nation who should go begging to other countries. We should not be a country who should say, give me relief, give me money, give me support, give me this. We should be a country which says, oh, we are going there to support you now. And that kind of gives us a sense of pride for the nation. So I think that is a sense of, there's a serious sense of pride for me yesterday when I said, oh, I now come from a developed nation. I don't come from an underprivileged nation. And I'll give you a very personal example. I went to Malaysia in November. And, and I had gone there 10 years back. And 10 years back, if any Indian would come to that country, you would literally find the people there looking at Indians in a very different way. They were like, okay, very average, this guy is not going to pay or anything like that. Now when we went to Malaysia, the drivers, all cab drivers said, you come from a rich country, right? The most well-spending tourists of Malaysia are now Indians. And then that's such a transformation to see that, okay, a country like India is now, spending money across the world. We are supposed to now tell people don't go out and, probably there is more money to spend in the country also. And that's exactly what the Prime Minister is trying to do. But this is this was the biggest highlight for me for yesterday. And that's why I thought I'll bring this down for the first time, that we are looking at a fantastic, big size economy in the times to come. We are talking of a country which is going to become it's already a top 5 economy. And we're talking about number 4 and number 3 in the next few years, which is a wow thing to happen. So this is one big highlight for me. The next big highlight definitely is the capex. This was expected. This was fairly expected when we probably did a class discussion in the thing that we said infrastructure investing would spend and go up. This is the only way to take it forward. So infrastructure, as much as we would see, versus what we expect further, is that it is going to go further. From last year, please understand the increase is 11.1%. Inflation standing at 6%. If we calculate the real increase, can somebody quickly do this from my class? 1 plus I is equals to 1 plus H into 1 plus R. Just use your calculator and give me the number. If I am doing an inflation rate if I am doing an I of 11.1%, if I am doing an H of 6%, what is my R? Very quickly, somebody can give me the number. Anybody? 1 plus I is equals to 1 plus H into 1 plus R. All finance students should be able to calculate what it is. 11.1% is I, H is 6. What will be R? What are you getting as R? Anyone? If you can quickly calculate. For all others who do not understand what we are talking about, there is a relationship between nominal value, real value, and inflation. So inflation, if we are saying a 6% inflation in the economy, we are talking of an increase of 11.1% in the expenditure. What is the real growth of infrastructure spending in the country? 17.6%. No, you're getting it wrong. 1 plus I. So I is 11.1. 4.7. So 4.7% real growth in infrastructure spending. So you should almost 5% increase in infrastructure is what you should see in the entire economy. Which means if you have 100 roads, then you should have 105 roads in the country in the next 1 year. This is real growth after taking aside the inflation. So that is the number that we are looking at, which means that it's going to be a massive thing. Our population growth in the country is about 2.2%. And infrastructure growth is about 5%, 4.7 or 5%. So we're talking of a double infrastructure growth rate as compared to my population growth rate. And this is how I would interpret these numbers. So you have to start understanding that how would I go about understanding and interpreting these numbers, and that's what is my interpretation of the infrastructure spending, and we go about doing this. Okay, let's look at the next one. Even after heavy borrowing period since the pandemic, which is 9.2%, the economy is bounced back successfully, and our fiscal targets were reduced. So last year expected fiscal targets, fiscal deficit is shown as a comparison as a percentage of GDP. Okay, so if it's a percentage of GDP, then we are talking about a 5.8% of GDP, which was so last budget the announcement was 5.9%, which means our deficit is lower than expected. Why is that? Why would that be the case? Because our taxation inflows have increased more than what we expected. Okay, so that's why it helped us in cutting down the deficits. So the deficit has gone down from 5.9 expectation to a 5.8. Reaching and doing a 5.1 is going to be a staggering task, which I think is difficult. Given the size of the economy, given the size of the infrastructure spending, the country is not going to spend on a couple of things is also something which we should observe. And there was no announcement made on certain areas. Specifically, I don't see too much expenditure on healthcare. I do not see too much expenditure on education. I do not see too much expenditure on, couple of other growth areas, and rural sectors. So it was very few sectors. The key highlights definitely we understand is yes.
I believe there are expenditures in rural sector. So
No, there is no significant increase in the rural sector expenditures. So there was no big announcement made like the previous years when they said, okay, this yojana. So there was no new yojana announced. I mean, so there was nothing new added. Something is already going on, which means if I am doing a current deficit, I am continuing with the same deficit. I am increasing my taxation and revenues, so my overall deficit will go down. Plus my economy is going up. So imagine this is a percentage of GDP. So if it's a percentage of GDP and my GDP goes up, my expenditure does not go up, my revenue goes up, my deficit is going to go down.
yes.
That is exactly what's happening.
Yes.
Which means that overall my expenditure on certain other sectors is not increasing. Right? And I'm going to go through inflation. Which means real growth will be lower than previous years in certain sectors of the economy. Are we making sense? This is exactly how I would interpret the whole situation. Okay. And we're talking about a 4.5. Of course, as the economy size grows, and if we are able to increase our GDP at a much faster rate, then definitely the deficit would go down, and which is good, right? So it's absolutely all right, and I think this is a very positive thing to happen. The moment you reach a double-digit deficit, your economy is considered as a weak economy, right? So the moment, and we have had these situations in previous years, 1990s and 2000s, we have had these situations where we were actually looking at a double-digit, deficit. So definitely that's a concern, but now we are good, and that's why the FDI worked. In the tax domain, there is a different story. So I think there is same tax rate, nothing. Direct tax collection more than tripled. Number of people filing returns were 2.4x. Return processing time reduced. This is a very positive thing. This is a true thing. So I don't know. You guys are not taxpayers. How many of you are taxpayers? Some of you file returns. Anybody files returns? None of you. Your parents don't give you money to spend. Ask them to start providing and creating your, accounts. Start creating. You will soon be paying taxes. Understand it. So I have seen the situation where I can tell you that probably 8 to 10 years back, if I would file a tax return, usually my TDS, which is tax deducted at source, was more than what it should have been. And it would usually take about 6 months to 8 months to get the process back. And today, I get my money back in almost a month's time. And the process is done and it is finished. Even if they have to reopen the account, they reopen the account and assessment later on. But at the moment, on the face of it, they'll return the money. You say, this is what you have filed as return. Your TDS is more than the tax return that you're supposed to take. Okay, here is the money, take it back. So that's a beautiful thing that has happened. They've tightened the ropes in terms of the tax collection and the tax filing. So because of GST, because of everything going through bank accounts, because of the limits of... So what has happened is any transaction above 50,000 in the bank, straight away goes to the tax authorities. Any transaction above 2 lakhs, if you go and withdraw 2 lakh rupees from a bank account at any point of time, you can expect an inquiry, or at least it is noticed and observed by the tax department right away. So at any point of time, any form of tax withdrawal is frowned upon. And the economy is putting everything into banks, and they want people to start using more digital money, digital currency. That will also help us in avoiding the black money. And the growth in the economy that we see, or the GDP or the value that we see, is also partially because the black money is getting eroded in the country. So that's something which we can notice. So some part is real growth and some part is removal of black money and converted to white money. So a lot of income has started getting accounted for. So for example, a panwala's income, a sabjiwala's income is now accounted for because you pay him through the Paytm bank account or pay him through a UPI.
Yes.
And that's a very big difference from the past. So that's a big digression, and that's a very positive thing from the economy. And that's why the number of people filing returns, direct collections and return processing is going to go down. What do you guys think? What should be, if at all? Are you happy with the current tax slabs? Do you know the current tax slabs? You don't know. Okay, anybody who can share current tax slabs? What is it? You can Google it out also, share it out. What would be a current tax slab?
Up to 7 lakhs, we don't, any business won't have to pay taxes.
So there are two regimes.
Yes, correct.
There's an old regime and there is a new regime. You can choose between old regime and new regime. So up to 7 lakh there is no tax. Then
5%.
no. Check out the exact tax regime and be clear as to what is the exact tax regime right now. We should quote for individuals as well as for corporates. Corporates, there's a flat rate of 22%. The government in 2020 announced that they want to bring this down to 20% over the period of 5 years. So we have still 2 more years, and probably they would want to rationalize each to somewhere like 20%. And for individuals, what is the tax slab now? 7%, 7 lakh nil. Then how much? 10% for what amount?
7 to 20.
7 to
6 to 7.
6 to 750 is 5%. Then is 10%. Then
750 to 9, 15%.
750 to 9, 15%. Okay. And then from 9, no, you're looking at the wrong tax rate.
So what I can tell is 6 to 9 is 10%.
Okay.
Then 9 to 12 is 15%.
Right.
12 to 15 is 20%.
Right.
And above 15 is 20%.
Okay.
This is according to the new tax rate.
Brilliant. That is exactly what it is. So we are looking at this kind of a tax slab. So up to 15 lakhs, your tax rate is 20%. And that's the upper side. Above 15 is when you're paying 30%. So start thinking that this should also ideally go down. And if we start rationalizing this for the economy, you'll find more taxpayers, you'll find better returns, and the government's vision overall is also towards moving towards indirect taxes than direct taxes. So they want to increase, and that's why GST rates are very high. So now everybody pays taxes, even those who are farmers, agriculturists. Also, do you realize that our country has 60 to 70% agriculturalists? And agricultural income is exempt from taxation. So all these people do not pay taxes. Right? So 70% people in this country are exempted from tax just by the blanket thought process. Okay? And that's something which we have to start bringing. That's why indirect tax is a better way of taxing than direct taxes. Otherwise, you might see another farm agitation or anything like that, which could be crazy for us. Okay. Although there was some other positive tax related reforms, old outstanding, this is very important for old elderlies. So this is something good for old people whose tax returns were sometimes, created in a mess. There was some problem. There were small outstanding pendencies, and understand the process cost of a tax return to the taxpayer as well as to the tax authorities versus the amount. So up to 25,000 demand. The amount is limited. It has been pending for so many years. Every year, if I just look at the interest also, it is 2,500 rupees interest loss for the economy. And even one person employed by the department for 1 or 2 days would cost them 2,500, 3,000 rupees, right? On a per day salary basis also. So imagine that it's a cost to the exchequer rather than the recovery for processing each of these small cases. So they have decided to let go of these small cases. These are all old pending cases. So now you can take a relief that if you had a pending case of FY10 and FY15, 25% and you're done. So no books of accounts, no books will be checked, nothing is to be done. That's presumptive tax. Now the limit of this tax is now being increased to 75 lakhs. So now, if you are earning up to 75 lakhs, you can do away with making books of accounts. You may not need to make books of accounts. And rather than making books of accounts, 50% of that can be considered as cost. The remaining will now be. The other one was the heavy traffic corridor. And the third one was another corridor. What was the third corridor? This is all one corridor. Second was heavy traffic corridor. And third one was
Port connectivity.
port connectivity corridor. This is port connectivity corridor, correct. So that's the port connectivity. So these 3 corridors plus 40,000 trains to be converted to Vande Bharat standards and budget allocated to railways. Now India's railway system, from a passenger perspective, not the best of experiences, right? And we have seen this happening. And Indian Railway has been going through this debate of privatization or no privatization for a very long time. So India has been thinking, so if you go across the world, most railways are privatized. And then what happens is that private railway providers provide luxury services. Railway is like electricity, although there is privatization now in electricity, but that's what it is. They are talking about boosting EV production. There are more charging stations, e-buses, and net zero emissions by 2070, which is always being mentioned and spoken about. So we know this. So I felt that it was a marketing gimmick yesterday. It was a marketing budget. All were used, including Ayodhya Ram Mandir, right? Including the statement that said that we will be presenting, this government will be presenting the new budget in July, right? So I think all marketing was, subtly done in this budget, and there were all schemes announcement which said this is the scheme, this is the scheme. Of course, there were no new schemes announced; it was just an extension of the existing scheme. So this is exactly what we had. Some of the schemes that we spoke about were Lakpati Didi Yojana, which talks about women empowerment. We are talking about a 1 lakh corpus for interest-free loans. We are talking about housing schemes for middle class income, so creating about housing for 1 crore people, vaccination for cervical cancer for girls, and healthcare to all Asha workers under Ayushman Bharat. All these are existing schemes. There's no new scheme around this. So it's just about an outlay to these schemes, an additional outlay to these schemes, but that's about it. Okay?
Right.
Tushar, you want to intervene anywhere and you can do
So a couple of things that, which I would want to also say is why this government did not announce a lot of things and what was different in the last budget and this budget was, if you observe, I think in 2019 when the last elections happened, just before that in 2018, there were 3 major states that BJP had lost. There was Chhattisgarh, there was Rajasthan, then there was MP, I think, or some other state which was there. So they lost the assembly elections which are there. And that is why when they announced 2019 budget, there were a lot of lollipop, announcements that you would be offering this, you would be offering this. But in this budget, because the government has been able to win a lot of state elections, they, as Paresh also mentioned, they are very comfortable and they're very sure that in the coming elections, we are the only ones who will be winning and we will be presenting the next budget. And that is why I think they've saved all those lollipop announcements for the next coming budget, and they have just presented the budget for the sake of it, as it is one of the shortest budget and there is no new scheme announcement. So this is one of the things. Secondly, which was also discussed in the infra. So I think infra, what we are spending on infra, there are 2 reasons. One reason is that we are spending a lot of good money on roads and railways because the ministers are very good. If you look at Nitin Gadkari, he's very dynamic. If you look at Ashnavi Vaishnav, he's also very dynamic as a minister. And therefore, a lot of money is being poured into these 2 areas of infrastructure. Also, if you compare it with other economies in the world, one of the other key economy in the world, which is the fastest growing economy, is China. And if you look at how China has grown in the last 10-20 years, you'll observe that they have invested a lot of money into infrastructure. And they have invested money to such an extent that in China, it has become a problem now, that you will find a lot of buildings which are there, good major developed economy, you have to spend infrastructure. And that is why I think one of the key highlights of this budget is infrastructure, where they have parked a lot of amount for infra. Third thing which I also mentioned is that this government just spoke about how they have invested a lot of money into a lot of aims which have been made, a lot of IMs which have been made. But one problem with this is that they have not invested or done good amount of investment into primary education, which is a problem. Everybody knows school education, government school education is not good in India at all. Higher education, we are very sure that they are already good. So that is one of the key factors which this government should also undertake, maybe in the next budget which is going to be there, that they should invest good amount of money into primary, healthcare and primary education, and not only in higher secondary. So this is, I think, what was my takeaway from it.
No, I think very well said, because one thing which I can observe is the confidence of the government for winning the elections next term. Right? And that's why they did not have to give any sweeteners. They did not have to give any specific, advantage or say, oh, I'm going to do this. See, usually a pre-budget, so expectation from a budget which is prior to election means a lot of sweeteners. Usually should mean a lot of sweeteners. But there was no sweetener. They said everything remains same, which kind of shows the amount of confidence that the government has in terms of their ability to doing things. And I think, I don't know whether should I take it positively or negatively, But whatever way, it is their reflection of a strong confidence motion that they say it's a very confident situation. Definitely, infrastructure is a very positive thing. Definitely, I do see that the negatives in what should I say? The primary education, healthcare, education in general should be way more than what is being done right now. And I think they have announced NEP. They've started working on the policy, but they have not started spending the amount of money that they should do. One thing which happened in the budget was, that the government would want, but there is no announcement of research spending. So fortunately or unfortunately, we coined and used the term, but we did not actually have an outlay on research.
So I would want to take this point forward. So what I think, why this word was used, if you'll go through the budget or if you'll read the areas where corporate loans has been increased, you would find that the government would want to focus on AI development more. So because everybody in the world is talking about AI and India being our technology hub, although we are very strong in technology, but nobody is expecting us to have good research to create a world-class product for AI. So I think that's where the research is going to go, and that is why the government has parked that amount of money that you want to use this money, and we give 50 years long interest-free loans. So use that money, corporates and startups should use that money to research and create those AI products which can be a world-class product used by everybody around the world, which comes from India.
And what comes to my mind is that we should have at least a workshop on AI in the campus very soon. Right, and I think at least we should do, so while you're doing the hackathon, maybe in March, I think let's plan a workshop. Yes, sir. Yes, Suresh.
Sir, as we talk about education in India,
Yes.
and in the budget they mentioned that they are aiming to make more IITs and IIMs and AIMS. Don't you think that would just deteriorate the brand value? Because I just saw a recent post from the IIM Lucknow's group chat that they were requesting that 2011 seniors to get 72 of the students placed to get them for placement scheme every year. And IIM Lucknow being the top 5, 6, the best Indian college in this. So don't you think that would just dilute the brand value more? And
So I think it's a branding discussion versus the expenditure discussion. Right, so for me, whether you call them IIT, IIMs or some other form, you will again start forming, so there's a distinction between IITs versus NITs, for example. You can do the same thing from an IIM to an NIM, right, and you create another set of institutions which are the next tier of, right, so expenditure should increase. They can also work with private institutions to support their work. Right, and I think that's also missing right now. So government just keeps on spending and lavishly spending on IITs, but they are not providing enough funds where majority of the students in the country are studying today. Right, so why not support a private institution with funds and utilizations to create something wow, which is not happening. So these private institutions are struggling for funds at that moment, and certain government institutions are sitting with piles of money and they don't know what to do with it. So I think it's nothing to do with expenditure, it is more to do with the branding decision that they have to take. Okay, let's look at the blue economy. We discussed this. This is going to be again one of the big areas. So we have had white revolution, right? We have had, so India is the biggest producer of milk in the world.
Yes.
Right, and that's a very big thing, and we are almost double of the second number economy, which I think is US. I'm not very sure. Third is Pakistan. So I think in terms of milk production, we are number 1 in the world. But for all others, we are supposed to look at now the marine infrastructure. We have almost half of our country having a marine line and a marine coast. And we are not utilizing that marine coast significantly. So the focus has started moving towards our beaches, towards our islands, towards our marine coastline, and started looking at, this is a great option, and you can start thinking about looking at exporting. Also, Indian exports are not rising the way India wanted it. And this is something which is happening in the economy. We are a self-consuming economy. Our milk production is the highest, but we are still short of milk, to be honest, because our milk production is also not able to meet with our consumption of milk. We consume so much more milk than the rest of the world. So I think those are certain issues which we face as an economy, that we don't have this. Energy sector, we have already discussed 3,300 units of electricity of 1 crore citizens through rooftop solar. So if at all you want to set up rooftop solar, this is the time. Right, go back home, think about, discuss it with your parents, see if there's a possibility of setting up rooftop solar, and you can get some advantages. This is the time, probably this year or within this year, you can go about it. You'll get the best schemes available. Okay. Wind energy, I would say it's not too big. It should have been bigger than this, but we could have done better, is what I feel. But that's fine. Food and agriculture, increased milk production with 58 million tons already in 2023. We have, it's more than this actually. So 24 numbers are more, and Atmanirbharta through oilseed production and implementation of modern farming schemes as nano DAP. I'll tell you something very interesting. If you have an agri-based startup, your chances of getting fundraise is way higher than other startups. If at all you come out with a business idea, and that business idea is related to agriculture or food production, NIAM offers 5 lakh rupees grant at the idea stage. So understand, even if you don't have a product, your pitch is wonderful. It's an agri-based products. We have a couple of startups in KRMU which have agri-based products. So there are 2 startups there which are talking about. One is on honey-based peanut butter. The other one is on ashwagandha-based face masks and things like that. We have a couple of startups on the campus also which are into food producers and bakeries and others, which can be pitched as an agri-product startup. So start thinking, if you have an agri-based product startup, you can just straight away pitch to NIAM, get a 5 lakh rupees grant just to take care of the ideation. You get a 25 lakh rupees grant. It's not a loan, it's not equity sharing. You pay no equity, you get nothing. You just get 25 lakh rupees for executing and creating a business idea, and that money is given to all these startups right now. So I know enough people who get this grant. I have supported at least 4 or 5 startups getting this grant from NIAM at multiple points of time, and I've been a mentor to them. So that's a pretty good idea. And you can start thinking about applying to this, getting the funding. Okay, so this is going to be a big one, and I always support this. We've already said this was the shortest speech that we have ever had. The reason was no talk, let's keep it quiet. Yes, you had something? No, somebody has something to say. Why do you think it was so small? So election, they should have given more sobs. They said, let's do nothing. So yes, a better marketing campaign was the Ram Mandir strategy, and that's a way better method than this maybe. So it's a political campaign. I don't know, how do you see it? I don't want to be quoted for this on social media. but that's exactly how it looks like, and that's what brings us to the end of this presentation. I would straight away want to move to this. Tushar, you have any points, comments which we have missed out so far on this? Then we can take it up. Others, please, let's go through the newspaper. Anybody has any comment before we move to the newspaper? Anything that you guys have as an opinion now? Anything that we?
Okay. So, I read many of the YouTube videos. I listened to many of the YouTube videos yesterday. So one of the YouTubers is Akshat Srivastava, and he covered some of the basic points. Right, one of the points he covered was aircraft. Right, so Indian aviation industry. So what the India is doing is, out of 700 aircrafts in India, so 200 is being grounded just because in the last 10 years there. Yes. One way game, I believe. So okay. I don't think there are any other political party that has a competition against BJP in this particular year.
Don't quote yourself publicly. Some party might probably come and beat you up, but good enough.
But that's in favor of BJP, no?
Open supporter of BJP. Okay. Yes. Good enough. All right. So I think quickly run through what is said in this budget and what is said in the newspaper. It's a meme-based paper. There are all the amazing, stories that we're talking about. The first one says, "Picture abhi baki hai."
Yes.
Right? Very clearly trying to talk about nothing now. Wait till July. Then we'll see what happens. So kind of reflects this. They're saying we are not bothered about the budget right now. Let's focus on the other things. Wait for the elections and then let's do something. But what all is done? So the entire budget spoke about the last year rather than the future period, and that's exactly how I see it. Infrastructure and FMCG. So FMCG area, they are talking about rural India and rural growth. So if there is a rural growth, so most of the FMCG growth in the last 5 years has come from rural sector. And they say if we empower the rural sector, there will be more FMCG growth, and that's the only FMCG story that you can have. There's a charging infrastructure push to electrifying EV adoption, which we understand. 1 lakh crore kitty, FM says AI to innovation. This is the topic, and this is the thing which Tushar was talking about.
Right.
Very interesting, very important article to read actually. This also talks about startups. So this is the area for startups, and also understand that this is what is going to define the country in the times to come. We will not be a nation for production. We will not be a nation for exports. We will not be a nation of capital goods. We will be a nation of technology. And that's what we are going to be. So which means anybody who's not learning technology in this country will be left behind. Right? That's something which we have to understand as citizens of this nation, that this country is going to through a technology revolution. We are able to, in fact, highlight, and Mr. Jaishankar, in fact, in one of the interviews said that when he went to US, his son pulled out a paper to showcase his vaccination for COVID, and he had a technology-enabled, app to prove that he is vaccinated. And that's the difference between US and India today, right? So yes.
But I have a question here that no doubt India is investing a lot on technology, but we also many of us also often say that India is far 10 years behind the US in terms of technology. So I want to understand that can India match that?
My answer is we are no longer 10 years behind US in terms of technology. The times have completely changed. In fact, today, so there were days and there were years when we would say if an Apple laptop is launched in US, it will take at least 1 year for India to actually have the launch. Today it is launched across the globe in India and US almost within a month's time maximum. So India is no longer behind US in terms of...
On the macro level also talk about.
Absolutely. In adoption levels, there is a gap. So answer is, there is technology which is existing. So whatever technology is available in US is available in India now. But for example, it may be available to some but not everybody in the country, and that's the difference. So for example, a rural person today might not have all the gadgets and all the technologies. So not every house would have a laptop, for instance. But which does not mean the laptop is not sold in India. Right? So that's the difference. But I can tell you, I have really seen ghungat-clad women in rural Rajasthan watching YouTube and talking voice chats and using voice chats at the bottomest of hinterlands right now. So the technology adoption is very fast today. Today, I mean, the last 5 years, I have seen all maids, all auto rickshaw drivers, the bottomest of pyramids. I have seen beggars holding mobile phones, right? And I think that's a very big differentiator.
With an option of giving them via GPI.
I mean, maybe you can. I have genuinely seen this, that I have had a situation where I was on the road, I parked my car and I was waiting for the red light to turn green, and there was this bunch of beggars who were there in the corner and they were holding a mobile phone in their hands. Right? So that's the level of technology adoption which has happened. Except for that, of course, the level of technology usage in a household, let's say in US, is 10x more than India, which is understood and accepted. So we are not behind in terms of this.
How is it going to impact us?
So how is this 1 lakh crore kitty going to impact us? So what is government going to do is, they are going to put this 1 lakh crore money. Yes, Krishan? Have I understood the question correctly? You are just trying to say how is 1 lakh crore kitty going to impact us?
Yes, sir.
So fair enough. I'll give my opinion. Tushar, you can add up, and I think you can add to this. But my take is that how this money is going to go is for long-term research on technology. If you have a business idea or you are running anything related to long-term AI technology innovation business, and you need money because the technology will pay off after a lot of years, this money will be given to you at nominal interest rates. And in fact, the finance minister also quoted, it could be given at nominal or no interest rate also. So it could be zero or much lower interest rate as compared to other ways. And imagine if it is an interest-free loan. You are going to get this money to do research and you have to just pay it off in total without any interest. It's a great initiative for any startup or any business working towards technology for long-term growth. See, look at a lot of technology startups and think about, let's say something like a SpaceX. Takes about at least 10 years to come down to reality and start generating some amount of money. So for such business ideas, for such businesses, the government is going to support them with 1 lakh crore kitty. They put that money, they parked it around, they're going to decide how this money will be disbursed, and it is yet to be seen what will be the procedure. So procedure for getting this money is yet to be defined as a policy, but the money is going to be available. Fair? Okay. Yes, Tushar.
So there are three things which I would want to highlight in this. One is that the procedure has not been mentioned in the policy right now. What they would be doing is the department which is there, DPIIT, which is in the Startup India department, that is going to create a policy and they're going to be releasing the policy in the next 2 months as to how this money is going to be utilized. But three things which are very interesting in this budget specifically for this is, first, India and the government has very limitedly talked about research and development. That was never a priority. That was never the government, area for the government to focus on. This year they spoke about research and development and they increased the spending from 0.3 GDP to 3%, which is a very big increase. Every 0.1% of your GDP is a big number. So increasing it from 0.3 to a 3% is a very big number. So this is one of the things that they've started talking about research and development. Secondly, if you talk about the area of research and development, it is AI and tech. AI and tech, as I said, was never a priority for the government. Every time they used to invest some money, at least in tech space, they always used to call that money as investment into startups, investments into new businesses. They never, specifically parked aside some money for technology. This year, they have parked aside that money for technology and AI. So that becomes a core area. And third thing is, government announcing schemes would never be announcing schemes specifically for entrepreneurship and businesses for such a long term, as Paresh also mentioned. They have announced a policy for 50 years, which essentially portrays and which essentially gives a message that they want to focus on long term goals and long term growth, and that is why this policy is for 50 years. Interest is for 50 years. So three things are: first, they've started talking about technology, they've started talking about research, and they've started giving long-term loans, which clearly indicates that they want to focus on making technology a big thing for India, and specifically the upcoming technology, which is AI and deep tech.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. Let's move on. We're talking about tax extension for policy for startups. So there are certain startups which get 100% tax holiday for 5 years. And that's a part of the government Startup India policy that has been extended. That was about to expire on 31/3/2024, which is now extended to 31/3/2025. Small change. It's not a very big number, but they just wanted to use the word startup somewhere, and they don't give it this exemption to a lot of startups. It is given to a handful of startups so far. So the amount and the quantity is less, but I do see it as a word of startups to be used when we're talking about AI, infrastructure, technology. This is going to be a focus, and in fact, this should be the focus of the country to make ourselves a startup nation. So we will be a technology and startup nation, and there is no denial to that fact at all. Let's look at the India in toast for a few bonds more, which is talking about the borrowings going down. Can somebody analyze very quickly why did the borrowings go down for the government? There are two very big reasons, and in fact, something which is very interesting which has happened in this case. Tax increase, okay, that's the standard business. Privatization. That does not change borrowings.
More focus on the Make in India?
No.
Infrastructure.
No. Why would India need to borrow money? To buy oil. For energy inputs and energy imports. There are two very big things which happened. One, India got very cheap oil this year. This entire year was an India's boon year for energy requirements. And if that happens, that means that and what would happen is all my borrowings were in dollars. So I was also running with my forex reserves, running down on my forex reserves. Now what India did was two things. One, they actually got cheap oil this year. Also, they bypassed the dollar transition system and started paying directly in Russian rubles. So this kind of removed a dollar deficit and helped the country to get much cheaper, energy requirements. It helped us to reduce our forex reserve, improve our forex reserves. It helped us to reduce, and then the government bond yields and everything comes down. So I think that's the whole bigger reason where I see it. It's not mentioned in the paper, but that's exactly how I would read the entire situation. Once you start getting a hang of finance, then you finance does not happen on a day. You can't understand finance by just looking at the budget for 1 year. It has to be in perspective. It has to be in retrospect of next 4-5 years. If you're constantly tracking situations, then you're in a much better position to forecast what is happening. So for the people who have heard, how many of you heard the budget for the first time in their lives? 1, 2, 3, quite a few. How many of you hear it every year? At least this was your second or third time. You mean it? Oh, good job. So well done. Those who are hearing for the first time, you have to, if you start getting a hang of finance news, at least on a weekly basis, you will be able to then start tracking the economy. You will be able to start forecasting a lot of things. And this is also what gives you a finance knowledge. It's a factor of any growth factor is a dependent factor of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 situations. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things happen. Okay, that's why the economy is going in a particular direction. Okay, and that's exactly what we are. Let's move quickly. I think we are running against time. Fiscal prudence, we have already discussed the fiscal deficit going down. One could place permanent capex pattern. We're talking about the capex schemes. We're talking about 11.1 crore outlay, 11.1. So we have discussed this in detail already in the presentation. So we're talking about all of this. This is okay. We are talking about Vande Bharat upgrade, which is the railways, and talking about how railways are going to become better. Investor man, beyond investor verse, we're talking about sectors which are investor friendly. Investors believe that there were no negative surprises, a closer reality. But what happened to the stock market is a question. It closed slightly lower.
I don't think so there was much effect.
But there was not much effect. It was fairly stable.
Yes.
So neither did it go up, neither did it go down. It was a minor deflection towards negative.
Every day.
But that's fine. So that is okay. Nothing big. So investors were not in a negative shock. They were neither in for a positive shock. And that's the budget. So probably it's just a meme based budget. And we should qualify this like a meme budget where there's nothing big, there's no shocker. And that's about it. So this is all that I would want to talk about. Farmers, we're talking about Viksit Bharat, we're talking about green, farmers, we're talking about turning rising numbers into productive figures. So all this is generic. The 10 big policy plays. These are the 10 big policies. If I look at this page, which is the 10 big policy page. So that's the only thing that I would want to talk, and then we'll probably wrap up and probably have couple of opinions from you guys. But Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, insolvency bankruptcy code, demonetization, they have given from 2014. So if you look at 1, 2, 3, then you're talking about goods and service tax, then you're talking about Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, then you're talking about PM Kisan Yojana, then you're talking about new income tax regime, then you're talking about PM Gati Shakti, then you're talking about Developed India 2047, 2023, Sun, Moon and Stars, and nothing for 2024 to be honest. So I think this is exactly where we go, and that's all from my side. I am happy to take any views, thoughts, opinions. Tushar, you have any final words? Yes. Abhay. Okay, quiet. Let's take a couple of.
Everyone, since I sat there with you guys, so you might have misunderstood, but I'm not a student. And I am one of your mentors for planning and pitching. Anyway, so the point is, you guys are all finance students, and the second you saw the budget, you understood it because you have been reading finance. There's a lot of population, a lot of people in the world, and in our country, in our families, in our homes, who do not know the terminology. and who do not understand this. So I am just telling you a couple of problems which, if you want, could be converted into really good startup opportunities. That's all I'm here to do for now. So I'll just take 2 minutes. Firstly, the terminologies, which a lot of YouTubers do it, like they simplify the budget, because not everyone, even the finance, some of the finance people cannot understand either Hindi or English. So a lot of YouTubers do it, but they do it just once during the budget, and then they're done with it. They move on to the new next thing. Since you guys are finance and in finance, you could do it for the longer duration. If there's a season for some agricultural crop, and there was something in the budget for that agricultural crop, or if there was a massive flood and there was something in the budget for that, you could come up with that, and it would really help the people around you. So that is one. The second thing is, budget at the end of the day is just a promise, right? That's all it is. It's not ki de diye. It's just we'll give you that money. We are planning to give you that money. We have allocated that much money. We'll make 500 houses. Though there is no centrally located database, there are a lot of agencies who do that, NGOs who do that, research analysts who do that, but there is no central database which is non-governmental and unbiased, which can tell you how many promises the government has delivered on. Budget आया था, इतना budget आया था, लगा actually कितना, right? So I have been, since last 1 hour, I have been trying to find open budgets India को छोड़ के कोई और, I don't think there is any other organization that firstly simplifies the budget on a regular basis. Secondly, looks at the results of it as well. It's almost like the manifesto of a political party. कि वादे करके उसके बाद आगे हुआ क्या, right? So we question our politicians the next time they come to ask us for vote. We should also become so aware, and our population should become so aware कि budget में आपने ये बोला था, तो उसका हुआ क्या, right? What are the repercussions of it? What are the impact that there is? So that is the second problem, and that are the major 2 problems that I found, which could be really used as opportunities. If there's anything else, I would be around for planning and pitching, and yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Thanks a lot, Abhay. Great work. Great. So, any other views, comments, last opinions? Anything? Disha, you saying something? No. Okay. Anything else, or do we wrap up? Yes. Good enough.
So
Enjoyed the session.
One
Yes.
last question that
Okay, wait. Shubhan has something to say.
what is one thing that each of you felt that could have been included in this budget, and you're expecting maybe in July that it could be brought forth?
Okay, so one thing, so I am 2 sides guy who talks about education and entrepreneurship. Okay, and these are my favorite areas to work on right now. For me, entrepreneurship is still highlighted, but education was not highlighted. And the backbone of this country is people. So in fact, what does India export most? People, right? And if that is the case, I can tell you that our education system, at least at the school level and college level definitely, requires a complete overhaul. And the amount of money that the government should spend on education should at least become 4x to change the entire system. Why not our schools? So we just had Denmark students, and there were like 15-20 Denmark students who came in. Their entire school education is without pen and paper. They've completely moved to off pen and paper completely. If I look at my kid going to an IB school, she invariably carries a laptop, and all her exams are again tech enabled, and she does not use pen and paper in the classroom. Which means that our country is required to convert all our primary schools into digitally transformable, technology enabled schools, which will be the massive and the biggest. So that's the next generation that we should work on. If we are talking about an FDI, then we are supposed to talk about the next generation, which is the generation Alpha, has to probably be tech enabled and not pen and paper enabled. And that is not happening yet. So I think that was a clear disappointment for me. I expect that to happen in July. If they do it, great. If they don't do it, I am sad. Right, this is one problem. Prashant, what's your view?
I would expect them to announce some yojana, because yojanas have worked really well for the central government and for the state governments. So if you look at how when they came to power, their Jandan Yojana was one of the key yojanas that was there. If you look at why they were able to win MP, so they had some yojana for women, some DD, some yojana that was there in MP, and that is why they have been able to win in MP this year. So I would expect some key yojana that they announce in the next budget, which is going to be the highlight propaganda for their, them to back on or for them to piggyback on for the next 5 years.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Have a good day. Great work.
Yeah,